So I'm curious what you guys will think about this one, but let's talk about using magic to end addictions, to change our own behavior for the better. And let me just say this right off the bat. If you are not comfortable with cold turkey, then the following steps that I'm going to talk about probably aren't for you. So work on that, and then let's get to it.
Necronomicon is coming.
So let's start off with my definition of addiction, which I'm just gonna go off the top of my head because I have kind of had a little bit of experience with having to change my own behavior to improve my own health. So it's when you have that compulsion to do something that you might think is beneficial for you, but when you realize that it is no longer benefiting you and it is actually affecting you in a negative way, but you cannot stop doing it, then it is an addictive behavior. Now, this could be anything from watching too much TV to engaging in negative substances. So let's talk about the magical ways that you can attack your own habits and your own behavior to end addictions. Now, this will cover things such as applying curses on yourself and the use of hexes and wards and just general deterrence to change your own behavior. But before I get into that stuff, let's talk about the way that you kind of have to shift your mind around um, to recognize that something is negative for you. If it hurts you physically or even emotionally, sometimes somebody who's engaged in an addictive behavior, which could even be just watching nothing but TV, you might find yourself saying that maybe you want to do something different, but you just can't think of anything different. Or if you're stressed out, that's the number one thing that you go for. Or every time that you engage in anytime that it's like A leads to B. Anytime A happens, you go for B. Anytime you have a stressful day, you go for like bad food. Or anytime that you have a stressful day, you go for a cocktail. Things like that. So you have to start recognizing that craving, that itch. It might be a weird taste in your mouth, the feeling in your stomach, just an uncomfortableness in your head that you might want to solve with either just drowning it in TV or having a cocktail or something like that. I'm going off of just what I can think of here. But once you start to recognize that it is no longer a positive influence on you, that's when you start to build resistance against that thing in your mind. And you need to culture that resistance to grow it stronger and stronger until that resistance of why am I doing this or why would I want to do that is stronger than the I need this and I want to do that right now. You got, it's like the tale of two wolves. Which one are you going to feed? The positive one or the negative one? There's that old myth that there's really two wolves fighting in our conscious all the time, and whichever one wins is the one that you feed. So you got to work on feeding the the one that represents the behavior that you want. So I would do that with self-reflection, journaling, maybe even recording yourself talking to yourself to give you a little bit of a pep talk when you feel in a really good mood. Um, you know, really highlight those different things when you're in a positive state of mind, and focus on those things. Anything that makes you feel positive that is not an addictive behavior, it's having some fun, whatever it is, as long as it's not negative. Highlight that. Try to cultivate that more. Build different hobbies. You really got to take up your time. You got to find different things to do with your time to occupy yourself so there's no free time to engage in that other negative behavior. Notice how I'm talking a lot about changing your behaviors and changing your thoughts and changing the shift in your mind. That's because um, what you're really fighting is your subconscious. You're fighting your subconscious urges. You're basically retraining your brain to go for B instead of A. You're retraining your brain of when this happens, I'm going to go for this instead. It's as simple as a diet. Are you going to have a salad or are you going to have a steak? You know, Are you going to oversalt your food, or are you not going to touch the salt? Are you going to go for water, or are you going to go for soda? And change is uncomfortable, and that's where a lot of people don't. That's where a lot of people fail. It's because they're used to having a certain thing, and when they change it, it's like, it's novel at first, and then it kind of gets old, and you miss the old thing, and then you just want to go back to it. But you got to build that resistance and that resolve of, nope, this is good for me. So that's why I really emphasize journaling and keeping a track of your positive behaviors. Highlight everything positive, and even just vent about your negativity. A lot of times when addictive behaviors happen, it's mainly because we have a void, a hole, maybe from some pain that we haven't resolved yet, and we use an addictive behavior, an addictive substance, to bury on top of that. So meditating, journaling, self-reflection, maybe even talking things out with a very receptive person, just to really get deep down in there and figure out what is that pain that you're covering up. And it could be solved with things such as deep meditation, journeying, astral travel, to really discover those different parts of yourself. Maybe even soul retrieval. The idea of soul retrieval is when we have a traumatic experience, part of our soul kind of fractures off, and there's that void in there. And until we acknowledge that pain and kind of respect it and learn from it, then we are always going to have that void. And I'm talking about addiction from a spiritual perspective as well as a psychological one, because that's the way that I think about stuff. So if you guys think differently, put it down in the comments. I love discussions. But let's get into attacking this stuff. Now, to change your own behavior really comes from like a defensive magic standpoint, because you are defending that part of yourself that wants to improve from that part of yourself that does not want to improve and wants to stay with the old stuff. So now with things such as hexes and wards, sorry, there's a fly, and I don't like them in front of my screen, but so let me give you an example. Somebody who has difficulty with, maybe they want to quit smoking, right? Well, first you got to, find a substitute for and the cat's going nuts. Find a substitute for those tactile feelings, like maybe hold a pen in your fingers, or they're still running around. Hold a pen in your fingers instead of a cigarette. Maybe have a lifesaver or a lollipop in your mouth instead of a cigarette. You get what I'm talking about? My dad, just in the last several months, he quit smoking due to talking to his doctor and stuff. And he has the strongest willpower of anybody I know. And he was able to quit cold turkey after being like a pack a day person. And that's really what you want to get. He recognized that it was not good for him, and any further steps down that road was not going to be any good, not even just one once in a while. Because what you have to realize is that an addiction might psychologically make you happy, but it's physically harmful. Ending an addiction might make you psychologically uncomfortable, but physically it's the best thing for you, and sometimes psychologically the best thing for you too. But so with my example of smoking and hexes, the way that a hex works and the way that most magic works is the way that you project energy onto things. And there's a great example in a book that I have where this person did not want anyone to buy this car that they saw on a lot when they were saving up money for it. So every time that she went by that car, she stared at it and thought, she projected ideas of accidents and negativity happening on that car, so that anyone else that would go near it would not touch it, because anytime that they were around it, they were like, this car seems too fast, I might hurt myself, and therefore they wouldn't touch it, so it's reserved for this person. Well, how can we apply this to addictions, right? So where do we find cigarettes? We find them at grocery stores. We find them at gas stations. We find them at, we used to find them at pharmacies, but I guess, they kind of, at least in my area, they kicked it. So what you can do is you stop in a parking lot of a gas station every time you fill up gas. Try, just, if you have to go inside and pay in cash, don't even observe the cigarettes behind the counter. or pay with a gas card like a lot of people do. Maybe if you're with somebody else, send them in to the gas station with the cash to pay for it. You have to change your own behavior. Every time that you look at a pack of cigarettes, maybe even like an ad in a magazine, I don't know if they have those anymore, but even if someone around you smokes or whatever, you see a box, you project the idea that is harmful. Every time that you look at it, don't even let yourself think, I want one of those. You think that's harmful to me. You are projecting the energy and the idea that is no longer for you, and it is no good for you. You can do this to gas stations, you can do this to liquor stores, you could even do this if you drive by someone's house who um, engages in that kind of thing. Maybe it's a friend that you used to have, but you cut them out because the activities they were engaging in were no longer any good for you. When you drive past it, you say, "I'm not going there." That's bad news. And you can even, for those of us that are creative with visualization, you can apply a color of red or black or even just a giant X on it. Really just sit there and try to see in your mind's eye like a do not enter sign, things like that. That sets up in your mind these walls of do not go there. And that, when you are doing that consciously, then eventually, the more that we do something consciously, the more it seeps into our subconscious and it becomes a part of us. Habits can be broken in like 21 days, I think it is. Maybe even way more than that. But if you want to build a better habit of working out, it takes several days before it becomes comfortable and it becomes routine. So do the same thing with projecting this nasty don't go there energy on every source of your crutch, let's say. Liquor stores, gas stations, different people's houses, even even stressful situations. Remove yourself from those. If you interact with someone who um, kicks that craving in, then you have every right to say, nope, I'm not hanging out with that person. You could even do a spell against them, a binding spell where you take a cord and you tie several knots in it, and every time you tie a knot, you think about what you do not want this person to do and how you do not want them to affect you, and you're not really harming them. You are setting a boundary between you and them to not let their energy affect you. There are some spells where they say you can take the substance, like a cigarette, for example, and when you see it burned in an offering bowl and it's not being burned to, cigarettes, for example, and you're not burning it to smoke it, then it's seeing as you're using it for a different purpose, then that's good. I think that's a little bit too risky, to be honest, because you still have physical possession of that substance, and even before doing the ritual, you might just you might even want to have a little bit of it, or even the smell of burning it might be a little bit too tempting for you. Remove every single thing that's related to that addiction from your space. I don't care if it's a cup you used to use, or even if you used to put your things in a specific location, fill it up with something else. You are deleting this habit from your mind. Okay, so I talked about putting hexes on things. How about binding yourself? You could do a warning binding on yourself where you can go into a deep meditation, and you can even use a cord, and you can bind yourself from that specific behavior. Remember, this is all about intention. So follow the specific ritual formats of invoking deities, raising energy, declaring your intent, performing the spell work, and then thanking the deities, and then releasing it, releasing the energy. Um, so if you're in the middle of a ritual after raising a lot of energy, which could be done through meditating or dancing or whatever, remember, we're trying to get that emotional excitement up. So you want to be excited about changing your behavior, about changing your life. And when you get into that really, really heightened state and you still go for the declaration of this is no longer in my life, this is done, this is it, then that more deeply sets it in. And you can in that, you can have the intention that when you go to bed at night and you dream, you will have reinforcement, and you will have messages of this is not good for me because I can do different things. You're just trying to change the energy inside of you from needing that outside source, because we really don't need anything other than food and water. We don't need our little crutches. We don't need that specific color thing that we wear. We don't need to have that candy when we feel like crap. We don't specifically need coffee in the morning. I've actually kicked caffeine for the last like month or so. Um, One of my buddies was like, "No, why did you do that?" But because it's the nectar of the gods. You know who you are. But I've kind of decided I kick that cold turkey, and it's part of what inspired me to do this. I've had my own struggles with a couple of things, which is why I really thought of making this video. And basically, it's all about shifting your mind, changing your behavior, engaging in brand new things. Maybe there's some new activity that you've always wanted to try, from a new sport or whatever. Take the money that you used to use on whatever your crutch was, and start putting it in a jar and take a look at, wow, because I'm not doing this, I got all this cash right here. What would I want to do with it? Really spend some time thinking, and I advocate once again for journaling. Write all about it. Even if you're bad at writing, you have dysgraphia, or you get hand cramps or whatever, type it. I don't care. Speak it into your phone. I don't care. The speech to text, or even record yourself. Recording yourself is really good because then you can give yourself a pep talk. Remember, talking to yourself is a good thing because sometimes you need expert advice. And so engage in different activities. If you're used to doing something every night, do something else. One of the things that I really advocate for, if you're in a good enough area for it, go for a walk. Physicality moving gets your mind moving. And even walking if walking is a new thing for you, think about it psychologically. You are distancing yourself from the old person that you were, by engaging in something new. And even going for a drive, going to some establishment to engage in some new activity. It could be like tennis or karate. I don't care. I'm just rambling. It's late at night. But when you do that, you are distancing yourself physically from the old person that you used to be. So psychologically, you are distancing yourself from the old person that you used to be. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to change your mind. You're trying to distance yourself. You're changing the energy. Even in your house, I think I already talked about this, but changing the layouts. If you used to keep things in certain places, and tossing out old paraphernalia, I guess you could say, if it's a cup or whatever, even an old cigarette case. I don't care if you want to repurpose it, get rid of it. You don't need any of that old energy lying around, and that's the thing. It's not just in here, but the energetics of certain things will try to pull us back in. If you used to use the same lighter all the time, toss that lighter out. Maybe it's safe enough to just not even have a lighter in the house if you used to smoke, because our brains work on associations. They're called schemas. When we learn something and new, we adapt it into a little box. And when we construct a habit, we put all of those different things into that box. Triggers into that box, habits into that box, timing into that box. We're trying to break that box and throw everything out and get it everywhere else. We're trying to change how our mind works, and it takes every day, one step at a time. One of the things that I think is really cool is, keep on a calendar. Mark how many days that you've been crutch-free, and even journal about it. Today, I didn't really feel that good. I really, really wanted it, but I said no. And you can look back at that and be like, I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it. And you really need a good support system. So if you're trying to distance yourself from something and other people around you use it, I don't care. Distance yourself from them, because they are not helping you. And you need people that will cheer you on. If you have people, negative family members that trigger you, be like, hey, I'm going through something. I don't feel like talking to you for a while. Nothing against you, but I need it for me. Side note, there is nothing wrong ever, anytime, anywhere with you declaring a boundary for your own psychological safety. And that can be done magically with binding someone, maybe banishing them for a little while, you know. Um, so, wow, I'm at about 20 minutes. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. Let me know what you guys think. And, let's start a little discussion possibly down in the comments. Good hunting.